Everyone says they don't want liars and bullies around, but rather than stand up to them, I think most people tend to hunch further down and hope they don't get noticed. I remember when I first spoke to the CEO of our group, there had been a few bullying accusations and we chatted about some of the issues, but I found some statements concerning. And I said that volunteers weren't paid staff and she might need to be treating them differently. This actually wasn't a concern for her because she felt we could just get more volunteers. This totally negates the input of volunteers and the time other volunteers put in to train and keep them. And things didn't get better from there. We found there were accusations of bullying, but not so much between carers, but from head office to the volunteers or the specialist team to the volunteers. And there was no process to handle this power imbalance. We found a typical behaviour of denial, silence, and then when we kept pressing, a forced response. I remember suggesting a way forward for handling the bullying complaints, and we were told, we don't have to do what you say. We asked when the policy might be updated, but we were told they were too busy to update the policy handling the grievances. I'd been told to keep my head down when I first became chair, but I didn't. And when starting to point out complaints, firstly, I would have my expenses claims rejected. And so I was very careful to read all the policies and check before acting, but it didn't stop. And the CEO would either outright lie, change the policy requirements we were supposed to meet, or change the process. I was asked either to make decisions based on a reasonable person test or take a board intention that hadn't yet been discussed or written up into a policy, some sort of process I had to follow. And when volunteers were bullied, we could never get any details about the complaints or accusations, and this has continued. The latest removal of licences from good carers who can't address their accusations is an appalling way to treat volunteers who are doing this because they care about wildlife. After reporting the CEO for lying and bullying to the board and realising that the CEO had full support from the board and there was no appetite for any change, I felt I couldn't continue on there. I stayed for a couple more years helping the other volunteers, but still having my claims for food and medicine rejected. I had spoken to the Department of Environment and New South Wales Council for Wildlife regarding my options, but they were pretty limited. I did feel angry that the bullying was known about and tolerated, and there was no action and no talking to the CEO about her behaviour. It annoyed me that this culture is allowed to build up and there's no appetite to change it. Maybe there is now with the exposure even in Parliament, but still no one speaks out. I must admit I did feel let down because I had taken on other people's problems to try and solve them. And I felt when this happened to me that people agreed that, yeah, there was a problem, but they weren't prepared to speak out or do anything about it. It's also interesting that the media had dismissed it as a problem that was everywhere within the wildlife caring system. Maybe, but we need to speak out to the people who are actually doing it. Target them, don't generalise.